Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to my session, Building Classroom Culture Through Creative Writing and Mentor Text. I'm so excited that you've decided to tune in and engage with me as you learn from me, and I can hopefully learn from you. This is my Twitter handle at lit_bark. And I encourage you to tag me with any questions that you have, any ideas you want to share. Because I always believe that PD is not so much me giving, but it's this mutual give and take of learning, shared experiences to make us both better educators. So I am going to introduce myself a little bit differently this time around. I'm not going to run through my resume. I'm just going to share a poem that kind of sums up, that will sum up a little bit about myself for you. My ancestors were stolen people, stacked and packed on vessels of hate and insecurities, brought to and enslaved on stolen land. A land that was home to the Arawak and later the Caribs. I come from a land the French raped. I remember a scene from the movie Amistad when an enslaved woman held her baby close to her breasts and decided to rest on the ocean's floor. Killmonger said, "Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage." These words are not mere fiction, my friends, for the Caribs smelled the rat. Chief Kairu Ane and his people didn't drink the French's Kool-Aid. To the north of the island, my land's remaining Caribs leaped off a hill to the spirits of the ocean than to be broken by who white history refers to as explorers, but who my ancestors and the Caribs knew as thieves, murderers, liars, kidnappers, and rapists. I come from a land prostituted by the British. In many a classroom they cite, "Give me liberty or give me death," but they colored those words white. Julian Fedon said otherwise. For almost a year, he challenged British rule. He demanded liberty, but instead they gave him death. I come from a stolen people, trapped on stolen land. Columbus called her La Concepcion. The French called her La Grenade. The British called her Grenada. Her name is the Isle of Spice. Her name is Land of 10,000 Jab. Her name is Camahon. As the PD progresses, I'm going to share about some of my teaching and coaching experiences with you. And so you'll get that professional side of who I am throughout the day. And feel free to engage on Twitter asking me more questions. But that's just a little bit about who I am. This picture was taken about 2 years ago when I returned home to visit family during Christmas. And this part of the island is pretty close to where the Caribs leaped off, and we call it Leapers Hill. It's a historical site. And this part of the island is called, this particular area is called Welcome Rock. It's beautiful. So once everything opens up, you need to visit Grenada. All right, so our learning overview. In this 40-minute session, give or take, we're going to talk about my working definition of classroom culture, understanding what a mentor text is and how I decide to use and how I go about using those with students. And we are going to experience 4 ways I use creative writing and mentor text to establish classroom culture, to get how to get to know students. And a lot of these strategies, a lot of these practices, you can use that outside of the classroom with building culture within a department, creating a sense of community as a coach delivering PD across a district or across a campus or whatever the case might be. This could even work in college classrooms. And so we're going to look at recipes and music. We're going to look at using story cubes, affirmations, and diving into understanding our names. So I'm just gonna ask you to reflect a little bit. You can reflect virtually on Twitter, tagging me and using the hashtag, or you may privately reflect. So, what is your working definition of classroom culture? Do the lines blur between management and culture? What are some practices you've employed to create this culture? Who does the culture benefit? Is anyone excluded? Are there any systems that might hinder your classroom culture? So when I think of classroom culture, I call it the vibe, right? When you enter my room, what's the vibe? When you see me interacting with my students, what is that vibe you get? What is that feeling, right? And how do and you can say, I can't see a feeling, but you can feel that vibe based on how we speak to each other, the type of work that you see happening, the type of systems that are in place in the classroom, the language that is used, the role that I play as a teacher, and the role that students play as stakeholders in that classroom. And so my working definition: classroom culture involves creating a space or an environment where students feel safe and free to engage with each other, engage with me, engage with visitors. Creating this space requires a team effort. Sometimes I remember when I just started teaching, a lot of it, when I entered the campus had its own culture, right? And that campus culture, this is just the way we do things. This is the way it is, right? This is who we are. That seeped into every single classroom. And it was really hard for me because, one, a lot of things were not well defined. A lot of things hindered student success. And a lot of things, they were more admin centered versus teacher centered versus student centered. And that was problematic. So I had to spend a lot of time creating my own classroom culture. But then once kids walked through those doors and out into the hallways, there was this battle between what happened in my room and how learning occurred, how relationships were formed, how respect was given, did not mirror that of the entire campus. And so there was a lot of friction there. And so it's really important that campus leadership shares some of your views and understanding and practices around creating a positive classroom culture, and it's important that they respect what you as a teacher or what you're trying to do in your classroom. Another thing to be mindful of, that a lot of the work should be student centered and not necessarily teacher centered, right? Sometimes we create systems and we policies in place to make our lives easier, but we have to remember um, the purpose and the why. Like, we are here for student success. We are here to expose kids, give them wonderful learning experiences, learn from them. We are here to develop critical thinkers and equip them with everything they need. And not necessarily give them, because sometimes they have it. We just need to help them polish that up, right? And send them out there into the real world to be like true change makers and the dynamic people they're meant to be. So we have to keep that in mind as we think about classroom culture and creating that space for our kids. So some of these components, some of these things that we have to be mindful of, the things that we have to consider when we're talking about classroom culture. I have pictures of great resources. Teaching Tolerance. They do a phenomenal job of providing teachers with resources and frameworks and steps to creating lots of systems, right? Um, they have a great they have great questions that you need to consider when you're thinking about classroom culture. Cornelius Minor, love him. In his book, We Got This, he provides a tool for educators to examine campus and classroom culture. There's several questions that you ask yourself, and a lot of the questions are very they force you to reflect on the students in your classroom, right? What does success look like for all students? And he provides great tools and templates that you can use to help other educators reflect. And so you can have like a campus-wide movement in changing your classroom culture. Part of classroom culture, and I'll get to this point in a little bit, deals with understanding who your students are, right? Understanding their identities, helping them uh, reflect on their own identities, take ownership of it, and so we can value each other, like, value who we are, value each other's experiences, each other's voices, right? And so this book is Anti-Racist, helps with identity work, and so does Sarah Ahmed's book, Being the Change. She provides awesome lessons in her book. And a lot of the lessons look similar to some of the mentor texts that I'm using and some of the practices I'm using today. So to help your students understand each other, to help you with classroom culture. So let's go through some of these, the big ideas. So when we talk about creating classroom culture, we're talking about honoring student experience and student voice. Our students bring a lot to the table. We have to respect their cultures. We have to understand how they see themselves, how they want themselves to be seen, right? And we have to honor that. We have to accept their culture. We have to accept their language, the language they bring to the classroom, the way they communicate. We have to take all of that and give all of that a space in the classroom. Honor their experiences. Sometimes we think of our students as living in a bubble, and it is our job to just bestow all this information, all this knowledge on them like they have nothing. And that's not the case. A lot of the times we can learn from our students. They have so much experiences. They're so rich. And it serves as a window for us, or a sliding glass door for us. Hashtag Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, right? And so we need to honor that and give them a space in the class. And most of the work we're doing in this session, most of the mentor text, the writing, it's a heavy focus on how to honor student experience and student voice. Invite students to create norms and then function as a facilitator. So some of our kids, depending on the school systems that they're used to being told, here's how to think, here is the answer we're looking for, here is how to behave, here is how to speak, to dress, to everything. And they have no input, right? But they're stakeholders. Think about if you invest in companies, you buy stocks, right? You have shares in companies. You get to vote on certain decisions. You get to, voice your opinion, and you have a say, depending, on where you are, in a say in how the company runs. Students are stakeholders. Parents are stakeholders. Teachers are stakeholders. Principals are stakeholders. Business partners are stakeholders. So why, when it comes to setting up how our classroom functions and how our classroom should feel, that a particular group of stakeholders have no say? That absolutely no sense to me. And so it's really important that you invite students in and explain, what are norms? Why do we have norms? And we have to be kind of careful where it doesn't blur the line between management and access to learning and engagement, right? So when we're facilitating the creation of norms, we need to make sure that we're not too focused on controlling the environment, but more so creating a space where learning is accessible and engaging for all students. Consider classroom arrangement and decor. How is your classroom set up? Is your classroom set up in that traditional testing environment with all rows, neat rows, straight down, front to back? Do we have generic motivational posters everywhere? Or do we have meaningful quotes that represent our students? Are students a part of the classroom decor? Are we asking them or inviting them to help put motivational things up, put work that they want to see up, make it their home as well, make it, part of them, right? Classroom arrangement. Quick story. In my last year in teaching, I had a classroom with a stage on it. And a lot of my colleagues, put your podium up there, put your teacher's desk up there so you can, have the perfect view and you can command the room. I don't want to command the room. I'm a facilitator in this process. I'm a partner in this process. And so a lot of the times I had circles, I might have a U. If they were ever in rows, they were paired up and I was in the middle. I wanted students to be able to engage with each other in a way that wasn't intimidating and difficult. I wanted to be able to have direct access with my students, and I wanted to feel like I was a learner with them and not someone here. So arrangement is important. Encourage open dialogue and inquiry. Create a space where kids are free to ask you questions, ask each other questions, share experiences, share ideas, share problems, share solutions. In doing so, what's important as a scaffold is to have protocols and some structures in place so they start learning how to communicate, right? Sometimes we're worried about the words that might come out or how it might come out in a learning environment, and so we have amazing conversation protocols you can model for your students, encourage them to use when you're having certain discussions. Provide conversation stems. Those are great scaffolds so kids can understand how to challenge an idea respectfully, how to add on to an idea respectfully, and so on and so forth. And then as they start internalizing that language, those structures, you take them away, right? And then everything becomes like fluid. Consider roles and jobs. So again, kids are part of their stakeholders. They have a vested interest in coming to class, being a part of this environment, being a part of how it feels once they're in that environment. And so assign roles, especially now that we're in a virtual setting. For some of us, it might feel weird because you're not going to have like someone to hand up materials, someone to lead small group or be a peer tutor or be the person that catches the kid up who's late to class, the person who changes like your reward board, whatever it is you have, whatever rules that you have, right? And so virtually it might look different. Maybe it might be the person who shares the links. Like, maybe it might be the person who is the researcher who goes out there and researches the information and pastes it in the chat box. Maybe it's the person that whenever a kid enters the Zoom late, they directly message that kid and they're the lesson catcher upper. So think about the roles and that gets kids engaged in the learning and in being a part of that community. Something that I experience as a teacher when I assign roles or jobs is that students, they are amazing. They're very innovative, and they will find ways to make that particular role more efficient. And you can learn so much from them, right? And that tends to happen if I'm given a task and this is my responsibility. I want to do the best job I can. I am going to find ways to improve the process so everyone benefits, right? Not only am I good at my job and I look good doing it, everyone benefits. Consider social or physical and emotional safety. So it's cool when you invite kids to create the norms. It's cool when you create a space where everyone can share what they're thinking. It's cool when you honor the various identities, the various backgrounds in your classroom, right? But we have to make sure that it stays a safe space, physically and emotionally. Words can do a lot of harm. So we want to, teach and model for our kids what words we use and what words we do not use. When it comes to physical safety, we want to make sure that kids aren't being physically harassed, whether it's touching like touching without consent, getting in someone's personal space, or even like fighting, right? And so some things to consider might be behavior contracts or social contracts, where as a class, again, you do this together. You invite your kids. What type of behaviors would hinder or classroom culture, right? What type of behaviors or what type of words will we say would hurt each other and prevent this classroom from feeling positive, from feeling safe? Have them brainstorm, have them sign it, have them explain it to their parents or their guardians. their family members, whomever they might live with, have them talk through it, right? And sign off on it. And now they're committed. They made it, they agreed to it, and now they have to follow through. And kids will hold each other accountable when they have a say in what they create. So just to recap, honoring student experience, allow them to share a bit of themselves, give them a platform to teach their peers, invite them to create norms, consider how your classroom is arranged, dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. But in the end, make sure you have like some scaffolds, some structures to facilitate that process. So, mentor text. How do you select your mentor text? And consider the things you prioritize when you're selecting your mentor text. So, take a minute and reflect on that. And then when I say things that you prioritize, I'm talking about, do you pay more attention to the skills that you have to teach, or that long list of standards from the curriculum? Is it about your particular interest? This is a text that I always use every time I teach narratives, right? Or this is the mentor text I go to for when I'm teaching poetry. I always teach this, but so is it about you? Is it student centered? What do you prioritize? So this slide I will take with me wherever I go, and I might switch out the card highlighting the diversity in children's books, and because it's powerful, and it speaks to our priorities as educators, right? So mentor text selection. When I think about what I prioritize, yes, skills are important. Standards are important because, of course, yes, for evaluation purposes, my admin will want to make sure that I'm following my district or my campus's scope and sequence, so kids can, get everything they need to be successful on whatever test they have to take. But most important to me comes from the work of Dr. Redeem Siemens Bishop. Books are sometimes windows, offering views of the world that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and teachers have to only walk through imagination to become readers have to only walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created or recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as part of the larger human experience. Reading then becomes a mean of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. So, how are you honoring your students' experiences and voices as you try to build your classroom culture? Now let's look at what is being published in children's books. And I promise you, it's probably like, when you think of children's books, you might think of picture books. I'm sure it looks the same when you talk about, when you branch out there into YA and middle grade, right? So look at the mirrors we have, the percentage of mirrors that are available to our students, especially our Black students, Indigenous students, our students of color. What are you noticing? They don't have a lot of mirrors, right? Publishers are not stepping the game up. They're not validating our students. And so we have to do the work. We have to voice, right? We have to demand that they do better. And we have to do better. We have to make sure, like we have to do a complete audit of our library, right? An audit of our curriculum to make sure that our texts are reflective of our students' experiences, their cultures, their voices. We have to make sure that they're seen and they're heard, and not in a checkbook manner, like, oh yeah, we have the one Asian main character, we have a Black character, we have a kid from the Caribbean. Like, it's not a checklist. And you also have to be mindful of the stories, right? You can have quote unquote diverse books, but you can have main characters that are very harmful in those books, very stereotypical characters, right? When in fact you want counter narratives, right? Show them, like show that whatever it is, this negative view of them that the world holds is not true, because here is a character that proves that part of society wrong. So again, I urge you, when you think about how you prioritize your mentor text, make giving your kids representation, positive representation, a priority. All right, so let's talk about strategy number 1, recipes and music. So what are some of your fondest memories of shared cooking? Was music involved? Does cooking and music, do they play a role in how you build relationships? Think about that. So what are some of your earliest and fondest memories of shared cooking? Was music involved? And what is the role of cooking and music, or food and music in your relationships? I will tell you this. Growing up in a Caribbean household, in a Caribbean community, food and music go hand in hand. And if it's not music playing, it's someone singing. And shortly after someone singing, someone's gonna go find that song that they're singing and start playing. Music, like they they go together. It just was not separate. So there was either someone singing or someone playing music while they were cooking, and there were different meals for different experiences. And I had to learn that as I grew up. Right? When you're happy, this is what you cook. When you're sad, this is what you go to. When you're sick, there is that. And it's just a beautiful thing. Um, so after doing some, looking at some articles, food does more than satisfy hunger and nourish our bodies. Cooking and eating together builds trust. Eating the same foods builds trust and creates a sense of familiarity and connectedness. Music allows people to come together over shared emotions and stories. So think about what we have right now. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Verses, but Verses is really popular. So Timbaland and Sweet Speeds, these musicians, they got together, created this amazing platform, where they invite like two major artists to come together and battle it out, right? Song for song, sharing stories behind each song, like lifting each other up, talking about how they were perceived, whether they were as friends or like competition. And what the cool thing about these Verses episodes, thousands of people would sign on Apple TV or Instagram. We don't know each other. You have politicians, you have celebrities, you have like the average person like myself. We do not know each other, but it's amazing when the chats start going, when certain songs start playing, people start remembering how old they were the first time they had heard the song, the emotion that song stirred up. We start singing, like you start sharing how you misinterpreted the words, how your parents are like, no, you can't listen to this song. Or you were singing the song along and then now you're grown, like, oh my God, this is what that song means. There was this sense of community with thousands of strangers from all over the globe brought together through music. So imagine what that can do for your students. Imagine what that can do for classroom culture when you tie that up with food. So, mentor text. Elizabeth Acevedo, in her book With the Fire on High, amazing. It's about a teenage girl who wants to be a chef, right? I'm not going to sell it all out there. So there's a lot of recipes in here, but she doesn't use the recipes in this typical like procedural format. Like, I'm going to go bake a cake now. Here are the list of things that I want to do to make this cool cake. She ties it in with emotion. She ties it in with music, and the measurements are so authentic, right? And this is when I usually use this with students, we read it out, and then I ask them, what do you notice about the recipe, right? What are some things that stand out to you? It might be things that challenge your understanding of a traditional recipe. It might be things that confirm your personal recipes or how your family shares recipes. Or it might be some questions you have about why did she, share the recipe in the manner in which she did. So I'm just going to read one recipe that I used. So it's Imani's No Use Crying Over Spilled Strawberry Milk recipe. Serves your ego when you're full of regrets. Ingredients: as many strawberries as you can find, sugar to taste, enough water to cover the sugar, a glass and a half of whole milk, 3 drops of Caribbean vanilla extract infused with mint. Directions: in a saucepan, heat strawberries, water, and sugar until it boils. Water will begin to evaporate and the mixture will thicken until it looks like jam. Keep on the stove for the duration of 3 listens to a Cardi B song. 2. Strain the mixture so that the cooked down strawberries are separated from the leftover syrup. Let the syrup cool. 3. Pour a large glass of milk and mix the equivalent of 3 mouthfuls of syrup into the milk and the infused vanilla. Stir until the milk is evenly pink. Best enjoyed while playing hide and seek with your toddler and listening to Rihanna's top hits. So you read it, project it. If you do this with kids or adults, it doesn't matter, but the questions are kind of the same. What are some things you notice? Does her style of writing and sharing a recipe challenge what you know about traditional recipes? Does it mirror recipes in your own life and how you share recipes with your friends and your family members? Okay. And so these are some samples. So this is I'm going to read my sample to you. This is my PD sample. So it's Lois's Frustration Bakes recipe. Okay. Stirs your anger when you should have known better. Ingredients: flour, some butter, the unhealthy kind, salt. This ain't fancy, so keep the pink Himalayan salt in the back corner of the second shelf in the pantry. Yeast, a little brown sugar, warm water close in a kettle, a good frying pan, vegetable or coconut oil. Get your real coconut oil with that yellow tint. Go to that Jamaican or Trini market. Directions. 1. Make sure you have a DJ Private Ryan soca mix playing, not Kes the Band Groovy Soca. Remember, you're mad and you could walk up in a fit, so you want to jump and wave and jam hard. Pour about 2 to 3 cups of flour into a huge bowl. 2. Add a pinch of salt and about a teaspoon of sugar, brown sugar. 3. Add a packet of yeast. 4. Use your fingers to mix up the ingredients like Ryan will mix up that Marshall and Iowa track flawlessly. 5. Add some spoons of butter. You're not making cake, the ancestors will guide you. 6. Pinch up the ingredients like how your heart was pinched up, like how you would like to pinch or punch them up. 7. In the bowl, you should see the mixture looking like crumbs, like your relationship, like your self-esteem. Not like your rage, because it's still very whole. 8. Make a little hole or clearing in the middle, not 6 feet. Your heart isn't buried yet. And add some water. Fold in the mixture like the little bit of common sense you have left. It should feel sticky, just like the situation you're in. 9. Knead and fold. Knead and fold. Knead those knuckles into the mixture. Release all that anger because your mother said that some boys don't deserve your energy. Knead that flour on your tippy toes while you bust a sweat. 10. If the mixture is too sticky, add a little bit more flour. Knead again. Knead until the cussing and crying is a melody and kneading and folding a sweet, smooth rhythm that your waistline soon catches. 11. When the mixture is firm and smooth, fold nicely and cover with a damp cloth. Because this is rush bakes, your anger is swift. Let the dough sit for about an hour or 2. 12. When the dough rises, it is ready. Heat up the oil. 13. Pull small pieces of the dough and create little balls. I had a thought, but it's inappropriate. 14. Use your fingertips to work through the ball and flatten it. Add it to the heated oil. Don't get carried away listening to the music. Turn when sides are golden and then remove from the oil. And 15, when all are finished, you sit with a friend and you eat until your anger subsides and you don't need him anymore. Best enjoyed with close friends while still listening to soca, but at this time, groovy by Kiss, Voice, or Dash. And so that is my recipe. And so I try, like, so when they would have identified the emotions that she, attaches to the food, she talks about music, you listening to the food, and then you play around with the measurements. So that's what I did in this one. And then I had participants also write their own. I did this with students as well in a small workshop. And this is one sample that I really love from one of my teacher students. So this is DeAndre's It's All Good sandwich recipe. Serves your ego when you've been clowned on the football field. Ingredients: ciabatta bread, vegan meal, my mom's trying something new, spinach, spicy mustard, Swiss cheese, a thin slice, like the thin slice I had trying to make a difficult pass to impress the girl I've been trying to impress since 8th grade, and we like in 10th, and nothing worked, so I don't know what I was thinking. Beef pastrami with the black peppered edges. That's some sweet stuff. Sun-dried tomatoes from the Greek salad bar in HEB, not that weird canned stuff. Directions. 1. Get Drake playing. Post Riri Drake music. We both in our feelings. Place both sides of bread on a small piece of foil. 2. Plaster it with mayo on one side and mustard on the other. 3. Place spinach on the side that will serve as the top, followed by the slice of Swiss cheese. 4. Put the pastrami next, followed by the sun-dried tomatoes. 5. Place the bottom bread on the stacked piece and tightly wrap in foil. 6. Turn your oven on high broil and stick that bad boy in there like how Clinton stuck it to me with that sack when I thought I was protected. 7. Let it boil for about 2 to 3 minutes. Remove, unwrap, and destroy, because this is the only place destroying of any kind can possibly happen. Best enjoyed with a cold glass of Chick-fil-A sweet tea with 2 slices of lemon, and still only Drake post Riri. So this is a student, and the cool thing, I try to capture some of it on screen just like how he captured it. And I allow students to use their own words, to use their authentic language. Whereas, sometimes educators might say, no slang, use, whatever. No, that tells when you say certain, when it comes to creative writing and creating voice and honoring voice, there is a place for everything in writing. And so allow your students to express themselves with whatever words that are familiar to them, whether it is sandwich or sandwich, it doesn't matter, because this is their writing. This is who they are. This is how they speak, right? And we are creating a space for them to share that with us, and we have to honor that. So another thing that I love to use, story cubes. And so story cubes, you can find them on Amazon. They have different types of story cubes. This is a traditional story cube where it has like generic images. You can get, they have Batman themed story cubes, and I love it. I love using the Batman ones, that because you can see there, because comic books and superheroes are like very popular and everybody loves them, right? So they have Scooby-Doo ones, they have different shows. They don't have Marvel ones, and I'm truly disappointed, or Star Wars, but that's another story. And so either which way, I like to use that just to see the types of writers that I have in the classroom, how they think, right? And that kind of gives me insight into the types of genres that I might use in my classrooms, the types of authors that I might use for text. So it's kind of it's almost like a little assessment, right? And so the way I set it up is I give each kid one cube, or sometimes 2, depending on how many cubes that I have. Everybody gets a copy of the scheme, or the cube key. right? So sometimes kids who aren't familiar with Batman, they won't know what a particular image is. Here's this cube key, and so they can match it up to see exactly what it is. And so we'll just quickly review. Hey, so when you're writing a story, what are some things you must have in a story? What makes a story a story? Oh well, we need to have a setting. We need to have like some type of conflict. We're gonna have characters, right? Um, they might be a resolution, they may not be a resolution. And so I would just have them start off with those generic things like, your setting, who are your characters, conflict. Start thinking, do you want a resolution, do you not want a resolution, do you want to leave us hanging, um, would you have enough time to like split your storyline, tell it in loops, however you want to roll. And so it would be like a quick 15-minute thing. So I'm like, all right, so I'm going to set the timer for 15 minutes. But at times, at chunks of times, I'm going to stop and throw in an element, right? So they'll start writing, hear their juices flowing. Some kids start drafting. Some kids just jump right, like outlining, sorry. And some kids jump right into the writing. That gives me a little bit of insight into who they are, right? Then 5 minutes goes by. I'll say, all right, what is dialogue? A lot of stories have dialogue. Who can tell me what dialogue is? Oh, that's the conference, speech between two characters. Okay, when you're writing dialogue, what are some important punctuation we need to have? Quotations, a little comma here, whatever. If I'm screaming, it's going to have an exclamation. Perfect. I want you to add dialogue in your story. They keep writing. Another 5 minutes passes by. So we're at the 10-minute mark. All right, who can tell me what a metaphor is? Oh yeah, it's a comparison, not using like her as like life is a game, life is a stage. Perfect. Work a metaphor in there, make it make sense, make it be creative. Go. And then 2 minutes, what's a simile? They tell it to me, right? What's an illusion? Well, so like you can play around. Typically I'll throw in 3 to 4 elements, dialogue, simile, metaphor, onomatopoeia, just because it's Batman. But you can play around with what you want to throw in. And then at the end, I say, do we have permission, do I have permission to share? Or would you like to share your work? And for the kids who are like, no, I don't feel I would like to share, like, all right, that's cool. You can sit with your work, right? And then, I'll ask for kids to share out. And sometimes what happens is once all the other kids, their stories start going and they realize how different it is, and it's not about how perfect the piece is, but it's how creative and how much voice we can see, then they warm up and they start sharing their pieces. Sometimes I'll have them share at their tables in groups of 2s or 4s, and then they can pick one that they want to share with the larger group. And they will fight you to finish. Like they want to finish their stories. And I've had some amazing pieces. But permission is really important, and I did not have permission to share it, but I guarantee you this works with kids, this works with adults. It's beautiful. Again, you get to see their thinking, right? The kids who are planners, the kids who jump right in, the kids who like want to add illustrations. It's just amazing to see how they think and how they process. Student affirmations. And so I just want you to think about these questions. When we think about affirmations, so personal reflection, right? What do you love about yourself? Do others see and appreciate those same things? Do people assume negative things about you? Is it because of how you look, your name? How does that make you feel? What would you like people to know? How do you want to be remembered? And so these are some questions that I pose to students. And the mentor text that I typically use with this, I ditched it in a recent workshop to fit in this amazing book, I Am Every Good Thing. Dr. Kim Parker, a co-founder of Disrupt Text, I saw her recommended this on Twitter. I was like, she knows her book, she knows her stuff, so I'm definitely going to jump in and grab this book. And I used it recently with some kids in a Getting to Know You workshop. And so I am just gonna flip through the back of it and just start reading from just a little piece of it for you. I am a brother, a son, a nephew, a favorite cousin, a grandson. I am a friend. I am real. I am tight hugs, a hand to hold, a shoulder to cry on if you have to. I hope you never have to. I am here. Although I am something like a superhero, every now and then I am afraid. I am not what they might call me, and I will not answer to any name that is not my own. I am what I say I am. I am that sound in the forest when the mighty tree falls. I am waves crashing gently on the shore. I am a force of nature, a miracle, a blessing. I am brave. I am hope. I am my ancestors' wildest dream. I am worthy of success, of respect, of safety, of kindness, of happiness. And without a shadow of a doubt, I am worthy to be loved. I am worthy to be loved. So, in a recent authors chat, NTC hosted with Dr. Kim Parker, the authors talked about the power of this book. And although this book originally is dedicated to our amazing Black boys out there whose society really tries to paint a really negative view of them, this book is a dedication to them and all the young boys that we've lost through violence, police brutality. This book lifts them up, and it's like this poetic breath of fresh air that you need to remember the power that's in you. And although it is dedicated to our Black boys, it holds some universal sentiment to all our kids, to remind them that they're special, to remind them of their hopes and dreams, to remind them that they're loved and that they are worthy, regardless of what society says. And so this is a really amazing book to build classroom culture. And one way, the way after I read, like I asked those questions, then I read this book, and then we had a Padlet, a student Padlet. And so I just allowed kids to just post their initial emotions, and then we took that and we turned it into a quick write. And so they had the options of doing like a Dear World I Am letter, or if they wanted to create like a short story with some illustrations like this, with some extended time, they could have. But we jumped right in as I was reading. So we gave them I gave them these questions. We talked about it, I clarified any misunderstandings I read. And then as I was reading, they had access to the Padlet and they could just put what's on there. So these are just a few of them. I am a force to reckon with. I am that raised hand when lies are being told. I am that last kid in the library before the lights go off. I am on that Perry Mason, that Inspector Gadget type stuff. I am a mouthpiece for those who are too afraid to ask why. I am beautiful. I am as smooth as dark chocolate. I am a queen with that 4C afro. I am Black. I am proud. I am Leonard, not Leo or Lenny. I am the firstborn. I am responsible. I am that deep corner starve. I am the fury of that green tennis ball sailing over the net. Point match game. I am a winner. I am the daughter of winners. I am salsa. I am merengue. I am that hint of garlic on a fresh batch of tostones. I am first gen everything. I am feisty with a smile. I am a lady and a scholar. I am someone that matters. And so they had an opportunity to just put their thoughts out there in that Padlet. And then of course we had some deeper discussions, and this is when I invited the teacher back in. And so based on, this is where we develop like a classroom language, right? How do you want to be recognized, right? How do you want to be honored when you use, and we try to use that for praise, because sometimes like we'll give kids stickers and candy and we think that's how they want to be recognized, and they don't, it's not. And so in addition to understanding who they are and how they want to be perceived and how they want to be remembered and honored, how do you want to be praised? How do you want to be affirmed? How do you want to be loved? Tell me what you like, right? And that was a great jumping off point for that. Name. And so this is the last practice, the last thing that I like to use to build classroom culture. So I just want you to reflect. Why are names important? Is there any power in a name? So one of the first things children recognize is their name, because this is how they'll be identified at home, within their community, and in the world. And so when educators do not take the time to learn a kid's name, take the time to learn how to pronounce it correctly, a wall starts going up and that child does not feel validated. I must not be important to you if taking some time to actually pronounce my name and honor how I'd like to be called. I must not be important to you. When kids are prompted to use a nickname or settle being called by their surnames, their last name, the message is that part of who you are doesn't matter. So again, classrooms should be student-centered, or kids should feel respected and honored and seen. And when a kid has a name that might be unfamiliar to you, you need to invest in learning how to pronounce that name, right? Learning how to sound it out, even if it means writing out those sounds on a piece of card next to their name and practicing it and getting it right. The smile that comes on a kid's face when they see that effort for you to get it right. But when you start asking them, hey, can I call you Dee Dee instead of DeAndre? What are you saying? I'm just going to call you Mr. Butler instead of Narukwe. What message are you sending? That the kid does not matter, right? And so we need to do better. We need to honor their names, because there is power in a name. There is history in names. Names are our identity. It's part of who we are. And so going back to, there are several mentor texts that I love to use when we tackle names, because names are huge. Now more than ever, names are huge. And so it's really important to start the year right, and especially in a virtual setting, when kids have to spell their names and then you're asking them to shorten a name, or you're still butchering that name. It's the same vibe in a classroom that it would be virtually when it's in front of everyone. And so I'm going to revisit my text with the fire and high. I'm just going to read it a little bit. So I just want you to listen and think about the power of a name. Like, what's in a name? Emma. I wanted to give baby girl a nice name, the kind of name that doesn't tell you too much before you meet her, the way mine does, because nobody ever met a white girl named Imani. And as soon as they see my name on a resume or college application, they think they know exactly what kind of girl they get. They know way more about me than they need to know. And shoot, information ain't free. So my daughter's name isn't going to tell anybody any information they didn't earn. That's why I fought Tyrone tooth and nail to name her Emma. You just want her to have the same letters as yours. Tyrone is a whiner. No, I want her name to sound less like either of ours, I said. And I don't remember if I kissed baby girl's infant cheek. But I know in that moment, I felt this huge emotion. I wanted to do whatever I could to give my daughter the best opportunity in the world. And although our names do have similar letters, mine is full of silverware sharp sounds. Imani. Hers is soft, rolls off the tongue like a half-dreamed murmur. Anyhow, Tyrone was late on the day I filled out the birth certificate, so Emma it was. I know a name alone can't guarantee new opportunities, but at the very least, it'll give her a chance to get in the room, to let other people realize she's someone they want to learn more about. And so after reading this piece, they share out, what is the power in a name? What does Imani say about the power of a name? And then they talk about it. And then I invite them to share their own personal experiences, right? My name, the Sandra Cisneros piece. I'm not going to read it for the sake of time, but I'm just going to put that up there. And this is another piece that I love to use. So I used to use this piece before I discovered this beauty. And so we would do the same thing. So I read it, break it apart. What do we notice about, the narrator's feelings about her name? Where did it come from? Did she find it powerful? How did she describe it? Did she appreciate it? How did others view it. So we went through these questions. Then, of course, it was almost like a T-chart. So they had the author's name and then they had their name, and they started responding to both of those questions. Then this is a follow-up piece. I'm going to play this. It's really powerful. Mm. I can get a little carried away with the poem, but it's really powerful. And so you can play this after you read um, the With the Fire and High piece, after you read the House of Mango Street piece. I've seen some teachers do like stations, and they give the kids the guiding questions and they rotate from mentor text to mentor text, and then there's a whole class discussion, asking kids like, which piece pulled you in more, and let's talk about that and why and how it relates to your name, right? This poem, this piece, this video, the spoken word, it when I use it in PDs with adults, it pulls us in together. One of my campuses, I use this with the adults, and then I model that for them with some kids. And this campus is very multicultural. They have over like 80 spoken language, different languages spoken there. Kids from like almost like every corner of the globe, and it's so beautiful. I loved going there. And this poem sparked a lot of conversation about immigration, and kids felt comfortable enough to talk about the process that a lot of immigrants go through coming over here, and the shedding, the erasing of some of the erasing piece by piece of who they are, so they can assimilate, right? So they can blend in and not raise too many eyebrows about their legal status, their immigration status. And so I've had lots of kids from different parts of Asia, different countries in Africa, say that they choose a more American sounding name. So, like they don't have to pronounce, like teach someone how to pronounce their name, or it be evident that they are an immigrant, that they're new to the country, because they don't want anybody asking personal questions. And then this opens up the table for me to share my story. My name is Lois. My background, I am an immigrant, but I did not change my name coming here. In my country, in my era, a lot of names were biblical or, like religiously related, right? And so if you're a Catholic, you got a saint name. And my name was given to me by my oldest sister, and it came from the Bible, right? It was in Timothy or somewhere in the New Testament. And so I got that name. And then other names would be attached to you based on family members and how kind they were, and traditional names, et cetera, et cetera. And so we had that conversation about, and when you hear kids saying that they had to erase or hide who they are, they know the language when they talk about, assimilation, when they talk about, like erasing their culture and their identity. They don't think that they don't have the language, because they do. And so again, like they will feel safe enough to talk about it, because this poem right here is so powerful that I have never used it and not had everyone jumping in to share. So it's a great piece. And so after, again, we could be like, this discussion question, this set of discussion questions, they're really great for after viewing this poem. If you decide to chunk it, like how I had the first set of questions to engage you, then we read the Elizabeth Acevedo piece, you had your Sandra Cisnero piece, some reflection, we jumped into the spoken poetry, and then we come back here, right? And so we talk about, what emotions does your name stir up in you, in others? What does it mean? How has it impacted relationship, the view of the world, and how others perceive you? So we talk about that just a little bit, and then we go into our own samples. So this is just one sample that I have, and I want to share the student sample with you because it is really beautiful. So the student sample, she really fell in love with the spoken word. She enjoyed the written excerpts, but she really loved that video. And so she asked me to play it twice, and then she jumped into her writing after we had our discussion. And this is what she wrote. When I enter a room, my teachers see refugee. They see someone invading their white space, something that does not belong, just as how they force the syllables of my name down a tight throat as someone drowning, gasping for air, for life, but getting water and death. They assume things. Is she an Arab? Is she Muslim? Is it a terroristic threat? They cover me with a blanket that is Mama Africa, as if it is a plain broth, no meat, no sneezing, one bland thing. They smile, sip their coffee, and pronounce names like Madeline, Charlotte, Svetlana, but try to erase all of me, asking to call me Ruth or Danny, as if that is what will be on my tombstone. The paper some folks like to ask me about, my diploma, my birth certificate, the name my ancestors whispered to my parents to bestow upon me. My name is Rufaro Danai. It means happiness, it means holy. It is rough and smooth all at once. It is seductive like listening to Sade while enjoying a sunset. My ancestors are Bantu. I am one generation removed, but no less Bantu, no less Black, no less proud. Let that sit. A few questions, some discussions, and here I see into this child's history, right? We have her name. I know how she feels about when people just blanket term Africa, and when people ignore to respect that the continent of Africa has different countries and different cultures, right? It's not all one major blanket of Black people. And I see how she feels about that there. I see how she feels about nicknames, right? I see how she feels about her name. I even get a snippet into Sade. This kid was, how old was Rufaro? 16? Sade. That tells me a lot, right? Her taste in music, her love of knowing that she's Bantu and how she wants to be called. Both names, Rufaro, Danai. And it is beautiful, right? And so all of this, we read the two pieces from those books, we listened to the spoken word, we talked, we shared our stories, they wrote. We didn't, I said, I made sure this is not graded. If you don't want me to read it, put do not read in the corner. If you don't want to read it out loud, let me know that you're not partaking in the read aloud. If you Some kids even opted, can I record this and then you play it, because I feel shy reading it in front of people. Flipgrid is a great option for that. Padlet is a great option for that. You're virtual now. Sometimes you can invite kids to turn their cameras off and read, so there is not that, that shyness there, right? That they don't have to feel intimidated. So there's different ways to pull pieces out of our students. So wrapping this up, um, questions or concerns. How might this work in a virtual setting? How is this related to standards? Is everything graded? What if writers are reluctant? Shoot me. You can contact me on Twitter and we can talk about these some more. But again, these 4 resources are great resources to start laying the groundwork for building a positive classroom culture through mentor text. We got this. It gives you great frameworks, great questions you need to ask yourself about the ideas you have or the current culture in your classroom, teaching tolerance. They give you protocols for discussions. I apologize. Great resources. Being the change. She gives you step by step how to bridge. Start with your identity webs. You talk about names. You talk about biases. It is beautiful. You have student samples, step by step lessons. A great resource. This book is Anti-Racist by Tiffany Joel. An amazing book. It's a great workbook for kids to work through. And she's having webinars coming out for students with teachers involved in the classroom, where they can process the work in a whole group setting and have follow-up modules and things to work on. So you have amazing resources out there for you and how you can build a positive classroom culture. I hope that some of the things that I shared, the practices, my stories, my samples, helped you in any way, shape, or form. Again, thank you for choosing to watch my session. I hope I wasn't rambling too much. I have 2 Twitter handles. You can follow me at ReadTechRight or lit_bark. Okay. And then, of course, you have my email, readtechright@gmail.com. So it's lit_bark. That's an error on my part. Or Read Tech Right. And again, here's my email. So reach out. We can talk some resources, share, let me know if you tried something and it worked or if it didn't work. It was great having you watch me. Bye, guys.